Welcome to the Nerdy Bunch presentation of NSSN, the Nerdy Sports Podcast, brought to you by a bunch of sports nerds. I am your host, the American Yank, Trav, and I've got my man. Sometimes I take photos himself, Koki. Koki, what's up?
What up? How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, and of course, coming back again is Tim. Tim, how we doing?
Doing good, Trav. Doing good. Excited.
Good.
Happy Monday, guys.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. We're coming off the tail end of episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance, guys. What do we think? We've got a couple things to hit on. We've got Dennis Rodman being one of the main focal points. We've got Scottie Pippen's return. We've got Phil's coaching style jumping in there. And then, of course, we end up with the Bulls winning their first championships in the Jordan era. So got a lot to cover. Does anyone have a point where they would like to start, or should we just go right in and talk about Dennis Rodman, who's easily the most captivating part of this entire 2-part episode?
I think we should let you lead it, buddy.
Yeah? Okay, well then we're going to talk about Dennis Rodman, because what a character the NBA found in him. And I think what I came away with is that he's not only probably the most unique character that the NBA's found, but gosh, was he dominant. I mean, I don't think a lot of people in casual conversation put Dennis Rodman in there as the trio that has to be respected when you talk about the Bulls in their prime. It's usually either Jordan or Scottie, but Dennis Rodman, my gosh, Coke, I'm going to send it over to you for your first interpretation of what this man brought to the Bulls and brought to the league and his character and all. And gosh, would he just be one of the most captivating stories in all of sports right now if he played in this era?
Yeah, I mean, I think if he played in this era, he would have a lot more issues, honestly, because of social media, right? But I think I watched all the ESPN 30 for 30, and I watched the Bad Boys Pistons, and so I had a pretty decent understanding of who he was as a player and as a person. So, but what I really enjoyed was how much someone like Michael enjoyed him, right? So seeing that relationship between him and Michael was really, really, really interesting. I think, and personally, like I relate a lot to him in terms of like that sort of recklessness and that you don't ever give up attitude and like all those things of like all he wants to do is just play ball, right? Like in some of those interviews, he says it's easy to play basketball. So when I leave here is when things get difficult, right? And I think that aspect of something, especially sports, something I could definitely relate to. Just like all he wanted to do was play ball. He didn't want to. That's all he wanted to do, and he wanted to feel like he was a part of something that he felt like that he was good at. And I think that because like sort of the opposite of what you said, Trav. Like again, if you listen to any sports guy talk about Rodman, they're like, bruh, it's like he's the best. He's one of the best. He is the best rebounder in the NBA history, right? Going up against Shaq, going up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, going up against Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. There isn't the time in which he played from 80, I want to say 82 maybe or something like that, or 84 around when Jordan came in till the time he retired. I mean, he played against the best centers of all time and the best big man of all time. And he was as eager, if not more eager than anyone, right? His sort of naivety, I think, allowed him to be such a good player. I think that's why he would have more issue now, because at least in the beginning there was a time in which there was a purity in the game for him at the highest level, which is I don't think you really have now, just because you have too many eyeballs on you for the most part.
Tim, do you think that in the time in which Rodman played allowed him to kind of be analyzed as kind of a unique, just kind of first time you see just such an exotic man, and you kind of got to give him his space because he is so unique to his own character. And yes, Phil Jackson understood who he was. I mean, equate that to today, where you have a lot of prima donnas in the league. It seems like it's a little bit more accepted. You start doing load management. You start tailoring to the player. Where do you see Dennis Rodman in the league right now from what we kind of understood about him in the 2 episodes that we just watched?
Sure. There's a lot of points to hit there. One, The thing that got me the most was that second jump, that Zion Williamson-like ability to just keep going more and more. He's battling with Charles Barkley, the man the rebound, the man that put his ass up on you and got every rebound he could possibly get. But he would go second, third, fourth, fifth jump and finally get the rebound. He didn't care about anything else. He averaged, what did he say, 27 points or something in high school. He could ball out, but he knew once he came to the NBA that he needed to focus on defense and rebounding. And that's the greatest thing you could want for any all-star. Any guy like Michael Jordan wants someone to take care of the dirty work, and that's what he was there for.
Mm-hmm.
Unique, perfect word to describe him. In the NBA today, I feel a lot of people struggle with, what do I do with my off time? What do I do when we're not, like you said, the easiest part of the game was actually playing the game. And that's the most enjoyable part for anybody. They're not going to worry about, how am I going to get my buckets? Like, that's the last thing he was worried about. What do you do? What do you do when you have all this time and all this energy in the world? You need to hype yourself up to get to this certain level to excel at a high level in the game. And then you need to go home and go back to the hotel and relax and unwind. And I hear over and over from all these interviews from athletes today, sure, they're worried about their Twitter followers, but I feel we know how to manage that now. They were in a completely separate time frame. They were, pre-social media, really. Like, they had a couple of interviews before the game. They were sick of Scotty questions and Michael questions, but could you imagine what, like, Kevin Durant had to go through when he left the Warriors? He's still getting beef for that, and he'll continue to get beef for
and he's not
the rest of his
stopping
career.
mid-season to go to Vegas either. I mean, could you imagine if there was a TMZ and an Instagram?
Well. All of us have I mean, I can't speak for you, Tim, but I know that I've heard of and seen professional athletes in places that they necessarily shouldn't be during the time in which you thought they should be in the season, right? The amount of times, especially living in New York, that I've heard of. I'm not going to bring up names really because I don't know this personally. I don't know these men personally.
Someone a towel, or you're going down.
One Oak. This guy looks tall.
This guy looks like J.R. Smith in the finals. What's going on right now?
They can't.
Why is he not in the Garden or in Cleveland? Why is he over here?
And that's what I'm saying. I think that, like, there is something. I think there's something very interesting about, like, that time in which, at the end of the day, it was the nice thing about the 90s and 80s basketball. Just get your job done.
Yeah.
Just get your job done. Right.
That really comes into fruition when Michael's describing the Indian drill that they did, where they're all jogging, and then it took them 4 laps to get to Rodman again. Yeah. And that type of thing is, I don't know. I don't know if players can do that unless, think of some football players who might be able to. But that's like next level dedication, where you almost have like a kind of like a schizophrenia type thing going. You've got off court where you're dating Madonna and you're dyeing hair and putting on the lip rings and whatnot. And then you've got on court, I'm about to be a champion. And that's something else.
I think what we also don't talk about in any sport realistically, especially when you look at growth, someone like Rodman, right, is that most of these people, and John Singleton talks about this briefly when he's talking about he got James Worthy on the phone, but these NBA players grow up in front of us. These are still humans, right? So these are still people. Dennis Rodman is a small kid from middle of nowhere. All of a sudden, he's on a team where, he has shelter, and then all of a sudden he finds out that the world exists. He finds out that there are girls out there that like him. He finds out that there are drugs out there that he might like. He finds out that, Like, I can go to a club, and not only can I do that and wake up and be fine, but I actually enjoy this aspect of the game. And I think that's what the amazing thing about someone like Phil as a coach does, because, Rodman tells us, Phil didn't care about me playing basketball because he knows I love basketball.
Right.
He cares about me as a person, and we shared that thing about basketball.
Right. Right.
And I think that the same, even with Jordan, like I said, John Singleton goes, I was talking to James Worthy. James Worthy, can you believe that skinny little Michael became who we thought Michael Jordan was? we only know Michael as Michael. Like there isn't, but I mean, for everyone else, especially if you're, Larry Bird or Magic Johnson or James Worthy or Kareem Abdul, you're like, that little skinny kid, or even Isaiah and the Pistons, this little skinny kid is now destroying everyone. Like you can't stop him.
Yeah. I mean, it's like he's gonna grow up to be Jalen Reagor. I mean, it really is something. Disclosure on the pod, listeners. You got 3 Eagles fans conducting this conversation. So
oh my God.
We're not going to go into that though. That might be a unique pod within itself. But I think what's interesting.
Save that for another day.
I think what's interesting is I'm laying out my notes right here. I've got Dennis Rodman on the top. I've got next topic is Scottie Pippen, then Phil's coaching strategy, and then it ends with the championship. As we just go down to Scottie Pippen, when he returns, he finds his dominance again. Tim, speak to how Pippen's return and him wanting to strive regardless of the horrible deal, and kind of put it up. I mean, that commonality between all 3 major players on our team is just the put up or shut up mentality. And, speak to that a little bit on Scottie's return, what you thought about his, return into the series as well. And they depicted him in this show.
Sure. I mean, like I said, the questions are going to keep coming. So I'm sure it was a bit of a weight lifted off on 2 ends, whether it was post game, not having to worry about the questions anymore. We could just focus. This is our team. Phil Jackson set the blueprint perfectly, and he was one of the greatest coaches of all time for a reason. He knew how to set a tone for the season, set goals, keep everybody locked in and focused, not worry about the media. So I think he would even be one of the greatest coaches of all time if he was a coach today. But I think when Scottie comes back, Dennis Rodman trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to do now? I need to step back to my previous role. And that's why he needed some time to unwind, I guess. Him and Michael were great at this, where they could go all day off the court and then still bring that same relentless energy to the court so they could ball out and get that win. And they cared about one thing. I was trying to figure out, like, all right, could a guy like Michael Jordan, who cares about winning above all else, like, disregard the craziness of Dennis Rodman because he could bring in the rebounding and the defense and everything that you needed from a dirty player like Rodman? Like, when you're going up against the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons, and you see like Dennis Rodman's the guy that's stuck to stop Scottie Pippen. He saw Ron Harper was the guy that he said should have stopped him in the Cavaliers, but they bring them both into this 97-98 team. They're like, all right, all these guys that can stop us, we want to make sure they're on our team. So when Scottie comes back, they have all their pieces together. Dennis Rodman ended up playing 80 games this season, so he was his number 2 workhorse for the first 40 or so games. So the first half, it's him and Rodman going back and forth, and Rodman's trying to figure out, okay, now I can finally start scoring some buckets. But I think it took that 48-hour reset, Carmen Electra, go out, whether it's
Carmen
drugs.
Electric in Vegas. Let's do it.
Yeah. Have your fun in Vegas, unwind, and everybody was cool with it. Phil got it, Michael got it, Scottie got it. Once they got back to the court, it was like, all right, it's game time. Like, LeBron even does this all the time. He's like, all right, we need to hit a different switch. We need to get to that next level. And, of course, COVID-19 put a little hiatus on everything this year, but the Lakers were about to hit that next level to prepare for the playoffs. So I feel this whole Scottie transition happened at a good time. Like, he was able to able to take care of his injury, and then all of a sudden, like, they just need to focus on the playoffs. So it was time to gear in, and I'm sure it was a little adjustment period for Dennis, but he was a perfect number 3 for this squad.
Yeah, I mean, and to use a culinary metaphor, is that the Phil Collins coaching strategy. Phil Jackson's coaching strategy really is the protein that binds all of this together. I mean, it really is something to kind of take a 100-foot view of this franchise and see how that little luck that you need in sports or in life in general, where everything kind of pieces together. It's not perfect, everyone's got to learn how to mold with one another. But Phil's coaching strategy, I wonder if people even knew that he was bringing in Eastern philosophy, native philosophy. Koki, if your lacrosse coach or football coach comes in and says, Koki, we're going to learn from the Wamapoke tribe, all right, and we're going to adapt this to sport. What do you think?
I mean, that's the school I grew up in, right? So like in terms of again those coaches, Phil Jackson, and I don't think my coach was Phil Jackson, but in terms of the theories behind the hard work, but then also the theory behind what it means to be one, right, and the goal. I think that for me, that is what my lacrosse coach brought, right? In terms of the difference, Tim, you don't really know this, but I played lacrosse in high school, and the difference between my sophomore year and my junior year was our coach. Actually, no, not sophomore. Freshman year to sophomore year was our coach, and then definitely sophomore to junior year, where it was okay, guys. Offense, I play defense. You're like, okay, offense, then take shooting drills. Defense, you guys are working. You guys aren't just chilling on the sideline. You guys are doing this. And he had us doing drills with him, right? Similar to, and when we do plyometrics things, and no one was training in plyometrics at the time, realistically. And he was like, it's optional, but a lot of us would go because it was about this sort of team building thing. I really agree with you, Travis. I think what Phil Jackson does really well is he reins in personalities, because he's the guy that as I was watching. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it was in the background. I was watching this on SportsCenter this morning, and one of the analysts she was talking about, she's like, Phil Jackson in the best way is disarming, right? He has the ability, just because he's gonna just ask you. And she was talking about the story of how, because Phil Jackson then went and go coach the Lakers, right, with Kobe and Shaq. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Shaq was talking about, because they were doing the same thing. They're doing the philosophical training, yoga, meditation thing. And Shaq goes to Phil, he goes, Phil, it's not working, man. I fell asleep. And Phil goes, yeah, Shaq, you were tired. Right? And I think that he understands in the sense of for Shaq, yeah, this might put him to sleep because Shaq's tired. But an awake, aware Shaq is going to get on that court and give you 40 and 20. You know what I mean? So if it means Shaq, this player, has to sleep during this, while Kobe is zoned in and taking every aspect of it, because that's how Kobe works. He's like, oh, okay. Similar to, I think, with Rodman to Jordan's, like, I think it actually made it easier when he gets to deal with the Shaq and Kobe thing, when he's like, okay, Rodman, Jordan, these are two opposites of the same cup. If anything, they're almost like brothers, right? In a weird way, where I think they're like, Dennis is this little brother that's just like, yeah, okay, but I'm also insane, right? And I think that aspect of things where Phil's like, yeah, because outside of basketball, right? And I think that he sees it in his own career. Like he'll go to play in Puerto Rico. He'll go play in the CBA. He'll go, he'll be a decent player, a very good player on a really good team. And I think that when you have those experiences, you're just more like, yeah, like you want to get the best of a person, because at the end of the day, we have a goal to do. Right. And I think that I think the best sports teams teach you that, right? It is the protein. You got to find that protein that melds you together. And luckily, also with Phil, he got the player that is Michael Jordan, and Jordan was able, because especially in the fourth episode, he talks about the triangle. Jordan at first was like, wait, this guy's gonna take away my like, I just had Doug. Doug's my guy. Yeah, Doug's gonna give me 40 every night. Like this guy Phil is talking about getting the ball out of my hand.
Is it to Bill Paxton? What? But to that point too, it's like, all right, so like, and then this all comes down to, it all came together, right? And that against the Pistons, against the team that had been their Everest for 3 years, there's that point when Pippen gets thrown to the floor, he doesn't react, and then they kind of knew that the the emperor wore no clothes at that point. So Tim, that 91 championship really is the inception of everything coming together and kind of getting that extra X factor of of self belief. And would you say right there was that the inception of Jordan, of the Bulls, of they've arrived? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what MJ said it himself right after they beat the Cavs in the '89 playoff round, right before they played the Pistons. That was like their arrival point. Hey, we're here. Here's this guy, Dennis Rodman. He joins us for the second three-peat. He wasn't here for the previous three-peat, but he does make us a whole different world. Like, it's like,
Mhm.
all right, the Warriors before Kevin Durant. It's like, okay, we're a great team, but obviously we're better with Kevin Durant. Here's this
Mhm.
guy who led the league in rebounds 7 years in a row. He is fifth all time on the offensive rebounds list. Like I said before, he just got it. He got the ball and got it to MJ. And MJ was like, all right, at first I'm sure it must suck. Like, all right, I'm not going to be able to average 30, 40 a night. But even Kobe understood, like, you got to trust Fisher to hit the shot at certain point. Like, you got to
Mhm.
trust somebody else to come in, and they're gonna be relied on at a certain point. You're gonna need them. You can't be the guy. You see how the Jordan rules were like, all right, this is how we're going to figure out how to play defense. This is how you play defense versus someone that's really good. You double
Mhm.
team him, you force him to the wings. Like, oh, okay, this is what they do versus any star in the NBA today. But
Mhm.
he was like, okay, I'm going to put on 15 pounds of muscle, even though I'm sure that's extremely hard. If I put on 15 pounds, no big deal. I could probably spend like a month just binging on whatever fast food and whatnot. But for an athlete that's doing cardio all in, I couldn't imagine what it's like to put on 15 pounds. But he
Mhm.
knew this was the one team up against us. Once we beat the Pistons, we're in the finals, and then we'll take care of the West Coast.
Mhm.
We're just worried about this one team, and
Mhm.
most teams have that. Whether it's the Rockets with the Warriors, whether it's Philadelphia with the Celtics, whether it's the Raptors and LeBron James. Let's get past this one guy, let's
Mhm.
get past this one team, and then we'll figure it out. So I feel like once they beat up and the Cavs and Michael hits that shot, it's a turning point after that.
Mhm. Mhm.
1990 to 1998, they were the greatest team of all time.
Mhm.
It's I feel the GOAT debate is mainly on like all Michael Jordan fans focus on this time. It's like, okay, there was a certain turning point in LeBron James' career in 2011 when the Dallas Mavericks beat him and he was humiliated. He had his worst finals of all time, and everybody's like, he can never be the GOAT. But then at that point on, he showed you, no, there's another level to this.
Mhm.
And Michael Jordan was able to hit that certain level in 1989 when he
Mhm.
beat the Cavs, and he's like, okay, I can't be the guy forever. Doug Collins is great. He's going to give me the ball. Once Phil Jackson comes in and I buy into the philosophy, you buy
Mhm.
in, but then when you start winning, you understand it's worth it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
feel that's where the turning point came from.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, as we to continue what we were talking about last week, uh is we determined that development and determination were the two pillars in the first two episodes of what kind of created the GOAT. I think this week the consistent themes was mindset, grit, acceptance, and respect. I mean, the grit that each person, Rodman, Jordan, Pippen, had, that mindset to go to Vegas and then outrun your team 4 laps in the very next, drill, and then
Mm-hmm.
acceptance of the philosophy and respect for your teammates. On the other hand, was that kind of philosophical uh, ideal that Jordan came to, resonate with to then get them over the line in the '91 championship. So I think as we continue to build this list, this is such a big core, and not to get into LeBron in the last 5 minutes here, but the similarities of all players that really want to excel their game have to kind of go through these trials and tribulations, and it's interesting to see the players that don't. You can tell where their wall was. You can tell that they were along the way and the wall, and they just can't get through it. Which my big takeaway is, as it regards to Jordan, is him being the best, and then being like, "Yep, Bill Paxton's open, gonna get him 18 tonight," and maybe we take it for granted because we have seen a lot of examples in our time of players that make other players better. And at that point, you
Mhm.
may have had, Magic Johnson's incredible passing. Now you have Jordan. Um, but around the sports world, I think you see that philosophy of acceptance as such a vital part of being great now. And even some of the best in other sports are still fighting that struggle. Uh, I think that Michael's adoption of that, within 4 years, 3 years of his professional career, and within a year and a half of a new coach and philosophy, to be able to do that, I think speaks so much to him about a player. Um, and maybe
Sure.
not, well, doesn't get enough credit, when we think about him, because we replace that with all of the stuff that we can see, in his game. So, with the last 3 minutes, boys, final thoughts. Kogi, going to throw it over to you. What are we excited about next week? What did we like about from this week? What do you got?
I'm interested to get back into the the 97 and 98 season. I think we touched on it in this last episode, but I think it was more about the past in the last two episodes, right? The first two episodes were a lot of setup for this, but like this was for that season. This was like actually just like, we need to actually go back. So I'm excited to sort of get back into the season, deal with a little bit more of the nuances of like the team and seeing how they still try to navigate the ship, with all the noise.
Mm-hmm. Tim, what do you got?
Mhm.
Expectations, thoughts, final wrap up.
I feel like this is a perfect example of giving us the behind the scenes look. And I feel I'm most intrigued to see what gets leaked out to the media. They make it seem like the media learns what's going to happen before they do. And that's kind of how it is in the NBA today. But I want to see, like, now that we could get the behind the scenes look, is that going to leak out? And is there like a certain reporter maybe MJ talks to or Scotty talks to? You always know like the media is going to influence how others perceive the team. I feel like it's like, one, did people fully get Dennis Rodman and his 48-hour hiatus? Like Michael seems to understand it's like whatever it takes to get us to win. But I'm more interested to see what gets leaked out to the media and how that affects the team, and how like Michael Jordan's greatness is all about overcoming adversity. And I want to see if there was another piece of adversity now that Scotty's back, or was it kind of smooth sailing into the Eastern Conference Finals?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like in 1989, it was Michael Jordan's first time in the Eastern Conference Finals. And like when you compare him to LeBron got there when he was 22 years old. It's hard to compare that. I feel LeBron's more about the overall duration and what he could do with sustainability and being able to keep that consistency, being at a prime level for so many years. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, 2011, he flipped that switch, and I feel he's still in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael Jordan had those 6-7 years where he got to prove it to us. Like, okay, now that I've arrived, now that I'm able to hit the Eastern Conference Finals, nobody's going to take this away from me,
Mm-hmm.
until Jerry Krause in 1998.
Right. It's exciting. I think based off of what we're seeing for next week, we got Spike Lee's, Jumpman coming in. Get to kind of see that version of it, for those that are interested in the culture aspect of sports and how that lifted up, the legend that is Michael Jordan. I'm with you, Tim. I think that the adversity going forward in the league is going to be interesting to see how, leading up to 98, they had to face, good teams within that time and had to continue to ride the wave. And I'm sure we're going to see a golden era and then we're going to see some more adversity pop up. So, another really good 2 episodes. I'm excited for Sunday, and we will be back with you all on Monday again. I'm going to sign off now. Koki, pleasure as always.
Yes.
Tim, pleasure as always.
See you later, guys. 6 more. 6 more.
All right, everybody. Well, that has been NSSN, the Nerdy Sports Podcast, brought to you by a bunch of sports nerds. All right, everybody, stay nerdy, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Keep it nerdy.